Hello, everybody. This is Sue Frederick and my beautiful, wonderful friend, Katie Kuntz. And today we are talking about my new workbook called Sacred Numerology that just came out this week. And Katie, I am so proud to introduce her to everybody. She is the editor-in-chief of the award-winning Unity magazine, so you should look that up. And she's spent 40 plus years being a professional journalist for magazines, and she's a phenomenal writer. And as you can imagine, we're really great friends because we share a journalism background and we're both writers. And when we met, it just was an instant chemistry. So I'm so happy, Katie, to have you on here today interviewing me. So, I guess we have a couple minutes before it's officially 5 o'clock. So while we wait for everyone to sort of jump in at 5 o'clock, setting my timer here to make sure we don't go too long. And also for anybody who's watching already, if you want to get this incredible, helpful workbook, you can go to Amazon right now and search for Sue Frederick or search for Sacred Numerology, and you'll find the workbook. And it's only $5.99, and you can get it on Kindle too. All right. So Katie, do you want to start?
Well, yes. And I just want to say that I'm really honored to be here. I love you, Sue, and I love your work. Sue is an amazing author, very talented, intuitive person who just really, really gets it. And so it's always fun to be with you, to hang out with you, to work with you. So I'm just very, very honored to be here talking about this terrific book. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, it was the first person I wanted to talk to when the book finally came out, and I couldn't wait to send you your copy of it. And we've done a numerology session for you, so you know how it works in your real personal life. So, and I'll just tell the real secret is that you're on the 5 path, and I love every person on a 5 path I fall madly in love with.
Excellent.
So well, what do you think
jump in and ask you the first question? Yeah, are you ready for the questions?
I am ready for the question.
Okay, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff inside the book, but first, whoops, there we go. I want to ask you about this cover. This is such an amazing, there we go, such an amazing graphic design here. And I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about how you chose that and what it means and what it is. And it's so intriguing. So can you tell us about that?
First of all, kudos to my brilliant designer husband, Gene Malawani. He's been a professional graphic designer and artist really for, almost 50 years. And he's the kind of designer that really intuitively downloads designs. You kind of tell him what you want, and he goes and works on it and comes back, and he's got something much more brilliant than you could ever imagine. And so he's designed all of my book covers, except for the newest one coming out in June with Inner Traditions called Through a Divine Lens. And here's why it's important to mention that one, because the publisher Inner Traditions designed that cover. And if you've seen it, it's along the same theme of sacred numerology. And when Gene saw it, he was so impressed. And it has that same vibrational color pattern on a black background. And so when he decided to design this cover, he worked from that idea of capturing that same energy. And I love it that it has the same vibe as my upcoming book, Through a Divine Lens, because they both have such a high vibrational quality to them.
It's really very true. So, Sue, I know that you've been working with numerology for more than 40 years, which is a very, very long time. How did you get into it? What got you interested in it?
Well, I always tell people we don't really grow as much as we should until we have a heartbreak moment, and that usually sends us searching for answers in different places than we're used to. And even though I'd always been very interested in mystical things, and I'd studied at Theosophy at the Theosophical Society in Chicago, and I'd always been kind of on the edge like that, studying all that sort of stuff. But numerology had never really come into my field of attention. And then in 1979, my beautiful young husband, Paul Frederick, died of cancer. And when he crossed over, he was so young and beautiful and healthy. And I was so angry at the universe, like my question was, why do people suffer? Why do good people suffer? And I had not been a Catholic for many years, so I didn't have that traditional idea that God punishes us or anything. I had already gotten rid of that, but it still left me with the questions of, how can good people suffer? What's the point of that? And then why am I still here? I know that Paul's in the divine because he communicated with me as soon as he was crossing and ever since then. So I knew he was okay, but I didn't understand why he suffered, and I didn't understand why I still had to be here. And I went to therapists, I went to all kinds of people, but one day a friend gifted me with a session with a numerologist, and this numerologist sat down with my birthday and Paul's birthday, and she literally in an hour changed my life, because she showed me how my whole life plan was mapped out through numerology. I mean, just it was so uncanny. We went back and reviewed my 9-year personal cycles, and at every one, there had been an ending of something major in my life. And then with Paul, I was in Saturn return, and Paul was in a certain kind of personal year. And our soul agreement was the number 9, which is the number of surrender to the highest lessons. And suddenly I went from angry at the world that things happen that are painful, for suffering especially, to, wow, I'm going to figure out how this works for everybody. And numerology is going to be the way in for me. I'm going to figure it out through numerology, because I just instantly took to it. And back then, it was 1980, Katie, and 1980, Katie. That sounds funny. Sorry. But it was 1980, Katie, and there was only one book in the Boulder bookstore. I lived in Boulder, Colorado. There was only one book on numerology, and I bought it, and I actually still have it back there. And on every page, you can see all my scribbles of figuring out everything. And I would call all my friends and get their dates of birth. And I started keeping a big notebook of what I was learning. And because there wasn't the internet, and because there weren't books that I had access to, I really had to take it on my own personal study journey. And I kind of wish everybody had to do it that way, because then you really learn it in your bones. You're not just taking it from what somebody else is teaching you. And then I have to say also that I gave it away for free for decades. Like I worked as a professional journalist. I worked for magazines. I was an editor of a magazine, and people would say, "Oh, do that numerology thing you do," and we would go out to dinner, and I would give them a numerology reading, and they'd go, "Wow, that was so great. Can I pay you?" And I would be like, "No, no, no." I didn't honor it. I didn't honor what a sacred tool it was. And so then I had another reinvention point, that we all have those. And suddenly I knew that it's how I needed to make my living, because I reached that point where I couldn't be in a world that I wasn't speaking my truth in. I had to speak how I thought about the world as the way I did my work all day. And so for 20 something years, I've been doing numerology readings and writing about it. And I'm a Unity minister, so I incorporate Unity's beautiful spiritual principles into it. And that's more than you ever wanted to know, but that's the story.
That's really a great story. I love that idea that you studied what was there and then also were open to what came to you, because that's the best, because we
It is the
all are,
best.
we all get a little piece of it, right? And that makes it more rich. So
And also
speaking of
because,
your,
we tend to learn from our left brain,
yeah,
logic, if we're reading a book. But if we're sitting there having dinner with somebody and we know they're an 8 path and we're hearing about their life and we're seeing how that 8 vibration has affected all of their choices, suddenly it's a real cellular knowledge that we're getting. And the other thing is I had many dreams where spiritual teachers in the divine took me on journeys and taught me about numbers. Yeah. And one of the recent ones about, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe we had 10 years ago, was George Harrison. He took me on a dream and brought
can he
me on
sing
this
for you?
boat. Yeah. And he was teaching me the real spiritual meaning of numerology. And it was not a conscious thing, but I woke up in the morning knowing that I'd been with him all night and he was teaching me this spiritual approach to numerology. So I'm open at night. Obviously, I have open for learning on my soul banner. And so teachers come and go, all right, let me teach you this. And hopefully I remember it in the morning.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your specific take on this, your personal take on this, because you call this sacred numerology. So it's not just regular numerology. This is sacred numerology. So can you explain the different approach? Like, what is different about this approach than what you're going to find on the internet or read in a book?
Yeah. Well, there's so many components. I got to try to remember to say all these different pieces, but one of them is that some people teach or believe that there are some good numbers and some bad numbers. And gee, if that's your path, that's going to be really hard. And I see it all from the soul's viewpoint. And I know that sounds weird, but my understanding of numerology is that we're all souls on a journey. We only temporarily come into a human lifetime for a purpose of learning and for helping other people learn. And so we're all hanging out in the divine. And Katie, you said, hey, I want a life plan where I learn to be courageous and I don't follow the rules. I figured out my way and I'm passionate and I go through life with an open heart and I have lots of adventure and travel. And your spirit guide said, well, that's the 5 path. Now, every path has a challenge and a gift. So this part over here might be your challenge and this part will be your gift. And you agreed to it all, signed on the dotted line, and came in because it was the perfect learning path for your soul. So that has no greater or lesser value than somebody who may have chosen a master soul path, like the 33 or the 22 or the 11. And my soul chose the 22. And I always tell people, like, what was I thinking? Like I was way too ambitious, because if you choose a master soul path, it just means you're determined to grow. And I had this memory, a soul memory of all of my posse of people growing faster than me in other lives and me feeling like I was being left behind. And so
Mhm.
really going to my counsel, going to my guides and going, I need that accelerated path because I'm not growing as much as my other soul posse. And they all had to like think about it and go, I don't know. There's a lot of pitfalls in this. And I even have this memory of one guide saying just before I jumped into the lifetime, your courageous heart will get you through everything. Keep holding on to your courageous heart. And I jumped in on this 22 intense journey. But the other thing I'll say, because again, that takes it out of any kind of judgment, no path is better than the other, any of that. The other thing I'll say is that free will is also involved, of course. Everything is not just pure destined path. It's our choice every minute how we're going to live up to that destiny. So I could decide many times in my lifetime, I could decide oh, I hate this world. It's too painful. I don't want to be here, and just get lost in my negative emotions. And of course I spent at least a minute doing that, and then I would start kind of seeking the light, seeking a different answer, and then be able to shift up again. And that's kind of how we do it here, like we'll say, I this life is too hard, there's too much loss, there's too much pain, and we might cave in for a while, but our soul is still going to start looking up and going, I need a different way to view it, and then I can move forward. And numerology helps you get that different view.
I love that. I also wanted to ask you about, like, I'm a word person, so I'm sort of allergic to math.
Yes.
So I have to ask you, do you have to be good at math to do numerology? And you make it so easy. There's charts and everything, but do you have to
if any of my
to do this?
If my childhood friend Chrissy, if she were here right now, and she's in the departed divine realms, so she's laughing because I was absolutely the worst math student ever growing up. And my father's in spirit now, but he was an engineer and he was really good at math, and he spent endless hours at the kitchen table trying to teach me math that was happening in my classroom. And it was like you, I was a writer from the moment I was born. I was writing, my grandfather put a typewriter in front of me when I was like 6 years old, and I started typing out a story for a newspaper. It's true. But you give me numbers and I'm just lost. But that's why numerology didn't come into my field until Paul died. It was such an intentional thing that I got that reading then. Because my heart was broken wide open. And so I wasn't in a place where I was going to let numbers intimidate me. I was so desperate for answers. So yeah, all the calculations are very simple. That's why I wanted to make this workbook, because in all of my books, there's parts where I write about the numerology, and I've taught it for decades, but it's just, I needed to have a user-friendly little place. Like, no, I'm not going to spend an hour teaching you how to add your birth date. Go open that workbook and see. And the other thing is, I've kind of invented my own twist on it, because many numerology schools only teach you to add the birth date one way. And by doing thousands of sessions with clients, I learned, boy, that does not tell you the whole story. You have to add it 3 different ways, especially if you're on a master soul path. So for example, my 22 shows up 2 out of the 3 ways you add it, which is different from somebody who it only shows up 1 way or 3 ways. It has to do with the intensity of your journey.
Well, that makes sense. And I'm relieved, because I can just see people saying, oh, numerology, no, numbers. And I will say that it is very easy. You've made it very easy here. And that's one of the great things about this workbook. You've got each page, there's lots of space. It's very easy to understand. I kind of felt like, Sue, I kind of felt like you were holding my hand as I was going through this. So I felt very supported. So that's great. Another thing that really struck me is that in the beginning, you talked just a little bit about the history, and I did not realize the connection with Pythagoras.
Yes.
And what I think is so brilliant about that, and I'm hoping you can comment on this, is that, if anybody is
cynical,
if anyone is tempted to think, oh, numerology, that's woo-woo, Pythagoras, he's a pretty well-respected figure, right?
I know. I mean, that's what I tell people. It's like, if you today go and figure out how much money's in your bank account or do your taxes, you're paying homage to Pythagoras, who created our whole number system that our whole world is based on, right? And yet, how often did we ever hear? I never heard growing up that he was a mystic and he started a school for enlightenment, Pythagoras, and he taught that every number has a spiritual meaning to it as well as a quantity. You know, I often joke that if my math teacher had been teaching it that way when I was growing up, I would have been a lot better at math. You know, I would have paid attention a lot more.
Yeah, my teacher did not mention that either. So, what do you think numerology's greatest insight is for us as souls on our journey? What's the
Well, you
greatest
know,
insight you can get from it?
there's different parts because I work with mostly grieving clients. I work with a lot of career clients because of my book, I See Your Dream Job. But as my work has evolved, I've really gotten beautifully accepted by grieving communities, especially helping parents heal, the grieving parent community. And numerology helps them, in particular. The greatest loss you could ever go through is the loss of a child. And when I explain to a mom, you know, what her soul agreement is and was with her departed child, and, you know, what he was learning and accomplishing here, and what she's still here to do, and what she's learning and accomplishing, and where her 9 year, I do this every day of my life. And it is the most amazing blessing that I get to do this, because at the end of a session, that mom who may have thought, you know, this is all a random tragedy and the world is senseless and purposeless, is now going, oh my God, I'm seeing this as some sort of soul agreement I made with my child before the lifetime began, for our highest good, not for punishing or anything. And also they begin to see that their child was a highly evolved soul. Like so many of these kids who leave early, they're like a 1111 master soul, you know, which is hypersensitive and hyper evolved and just very uncomfortable here on this low consciousness, low vibration earth plane. And when you begin to look at it that way, it also takes any judgment away. Like we love to judge somebody who might have addiction problems, or somebody, you know, who might have taken their own life or something. But from the soul's point of view, every soul here is doing exactly the best they can, and they're all on a unique mission trying to learn exactly certain little parts of the journey that make no sense to the outside viewer, but they may still be accomplishing exactly what they came to learn. And numerology helps lift you into that viewpoint. And one other thing I'll say is that the 9 year reinvention points and the Saturn returns, if a client comes to me and they go, oh my God, I just got fired. I think I'm going through a divorce now too, and my whole life is falling apart. I'll go, calm down. I'm sure you're in a 9 personal year and a Saturn return. And they'll go, what is that? What are you talking about? And I'll walk through their chart with them. And once they see that, yes, this is a pre-programmed reinvention point, that means there's a way through it, right?
Mhm.
Like if you go back and look at your past reinvention 9 years and you go, wow, that's when all that terrible stuff happened. I thought it was the end of the world for me. And look how my life got better after that. All the things I did and learned and grew about. It's one thing to talk about that, but it's another thing to see it mapped out. And that's why I put these charts in the back. In the back of the book, these birth path charts, because each person can write every calendar year of their life in this chart and really do that kind of a soul review with these personal year charts. So that is probably the most helpful part of numerology.
I love that because it's sort of like it's that thing about you still have to walk through the muck, but you get to wear boots.
Right.
So things are still painful, things are still going to happen, but instead of, sometimes so much of the pain is, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. This isn't there. This isn't right. This wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
And this gives you a different perspective.
And not only that, but Katie, we blame ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if we've lost a loved one or a career, there is a part of ourselves going, oh, I should have done this differently. If I could have, would have done that. And numerology helps us see, no, every single person here on earth has their own soul mission, their own soul plan. And if your loved one has an exit point and a soul agreement with you, you can be the best mom in the world. In fact, I just interviewed this couple on my Mystical Conversation podcast, which I love doing. I interviewed this amazing couple about the loss of their 9-year-old son in a traffic accident on a family vacation. And this dad had done everything possible to make this trip safe. I mean, it's even funny as he goes back and talks about new tires on everything and extra tires in the car and driving slow and starting at the crack of dawn and this and that and this and that. You know, that was his son's exit point, and there was absolutely nothing. You know, there was a woman who fell asleep at the wheel in the middle of the day and crashed into their car, totally out of our physical control, right? And that's what this dad said. He said, one of the biggest takeaways for me is that we don't have the control on the earthly realm that we think we do. Everything is driven by the soul and the soul's journey. And boy, once we can get that understanding, it takes away guilt, it takes away blame. It's just a much bigger picture.
Yeah. And I would imagine too that once you do that, then it makes it easier for you to get in the flow of what it is you're supposed to be doing, because you're not constantly, you know, second guessing yourself, judging yourself, being angry, whatever.
Resisting the lesson, right?
Right.
Because that's, I think, our greatest pain here is when something hard happens, you know, we're like, no, this shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to change it, or something like that, especially if it's career oriented. So many of my career clients, you know, like, it was that boss's fault, you know, it's not my fault. And we just cause all of this angst in ourselves. And yet the minute we sort of can go, okay, I surrender to the higher understanding of this. And all I'm asking for right now is clarity and wisdom about what I'm supposed to be learning from this and what I'm supposed to do next. That should be our daily prayer. And Katie, you have to remind me of that, okay?
Deal. We can remind each other.
Yes, right. But once we get to that place of surrender, you know, to what is trusting that this is, as Unity teaches, an all good, all God universe that has my back, which I do believe it is 100%. This universe is supporting our soul growth 100% for highest good. And so once I get to that place of surrender to it, even if it looks hard and it hurts like heck, suddenly things shift. And suddenly I see a little door opening over here and a little light and a little way to move forward. And, you know, that's the magic here. The minute we can see that little bit of an opening and head for it, everything changes.
Absolutely. So I have to ask you about names now, because you need to use your name in this. And that was one of my questions when we had our session. It's like, you know, I'm Katie Kuntz. My credit cards say Katie Kuntz. My bank account says Katie Kuntz. It's on the masthead at Unity. That's my name, but it's not the name on my birth certificate. You know, and I wasn't, you know, Mildred, but it was, you know, Catherine Louise Kuntz. So how do you pick, or do you do both? What's the scoop on that?
Yeah,
What if you have a nickname, you know?
that's such a fascinating topic. People get very obsessed with the whole name meaning, and I certainly did. You know, I would say I spent over a decade really obsessed with the vibration of my name and how to make it better, right? But here's what I've learned. And again, it's a lesson of no control here. And let me explain. The birth name that we come in with, and that name is something that our parents may have picked randomly or something accidentally. It doesn't even matter. Our soul picked that birth name. And when our soul comes in with that birth name, it carries the vibration of what this of what this journey is going to be about and how people are going to read us. So my first birth name, I definitely had the vibration because of all the missing numbers in that name and everything, that, wow, I'm very innocent and open and here to learn. And, it was a very naive vibration, you could say. That's a nice way to put it. And then as I married Paul, my beautiful husband, Paul Frederick, I knew I loved his name, Frederick. And the minute I took the name Sue Frederick, it felt like me. It felt like, and my numerologist showed me that it carries a more competent and confident vibration in the world with the numbers. And therefore, people who meet me don't judge me as harshly, perhaps. So I've kept that name for 40 something years. And even though I've remarried, I'm Sue Frederick. And that's the name I wrote all my articles and books in and everything. And it will always be my name. It's my soul name. But it does not change the initial vibration that's on my birth certificate that does explain my soul journey. So you can do both. You can go analyze all kinds of different names, but you're never going to change the truth of your vibration, as in the birth name, but you can change how people perceive you, which in my case was a good thing. So let me tell you a funny story about that. When I got pregnant, I was 43 and I'd studied the numbers at that point for 20 something years. And so when we were picking a name, well, my daughter came to me in a dream when I first got pregnant and told me her name was Sarah. And I knew from the beginning, yes, she's a Sarah. But then there were, like, what's the middle name going to be? And so numerologically, I wanted her to have an easier life than me. And I thought that I could have control, and that if I gave her these other long names that she wouldn't be missing numbers. And so the missing number piece wouldn't be in her thing. So the poor kid has this long, she has 2 middle names and they're both really long. And then, her first name is Sarah and then her last name. And she was like, all through growing up, she was like, Mom, you have no idea what a pain it is to have 4 names in school, right? And so what I've learned is that, we can't change a vibration of someone else's path. We can't even do something like pick a birth date for them based on trying to change their birth path, because the soul is in charge of it no matter what. The numbers are here just to try to give us a sign, a wisdom post about it. And if we try to override those numbers, the universe laughs and goes, okay, have fun, but you're on this journey no matter what.
It does kind of put a little bit of responsibility on you as someone about to have a baby. Wait, I should do the numbers first.
I know. It was terrible being a mom and knowing about numerology, and thinking, my gosh, should I schedule a cesarean or something to make sure she has a great path? But the universe laughs at that,
And full disclosure, my daughter also 4 names.
Oh, there you go, Katie. You are my soul sister.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out her numbers too.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this earlier, and I think it's a very interesting concept that, there aren't good numbers and bad numbers. It's like the way you describe it in the book is that every number has a strength and a weakness. And so it's kind of up to us to navigate, from the strong side, and yet knowing that there's a weak side helps us. It's sort of like, shows us the Achilles heels, right? So that we're aware of that. And I love that. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'll talk about it from my own crazy path as a 22-4. I wish I had my girlfriend Christy on here right now, because Christy sees me so clearly. It's amazing. Her name is Christy, and my childhood best friend who crossed was Chrissy, because when I met this Christy here in Scottsdale, and she's one of the moms from Helping Parents Heal, I fell so in love with her instantly. And she just nails it. Like she'll say, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I'll tell her, "Oh, I've got this book I have to edit, and I've got this talk I'm getting ready to give, and blah, 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 blah." And she'll go, "I think I need to stage an intervention for you on your 22-4 path," because 22-4 is about work. It's about getting a lot of information to the world to try to shift consciousness. And 4 is really a number of drudgery, to put it blankly. I mean, yes, it's about responsibility and strength, inner strength, outer strength. But at the end of the day, a 4 path doesn't enjoy life as much as a 5 path. And I mean, I signed up for this, but Katie, you're always saying to me, "Let's go take a trip." And I'm like, "But I can't, I got this happening or that problem, or I'm in school, like there's always some reason." And what I'd love to do is travel the world, And I always tell people, next lifetime, I'm going to be a 5 path, and I'm going to be shiny and traveling the world, having adventures, and it'll be so fun. But I just got to get through this one, writing another book, finishing another project, giving and doing another client session, and accept that this is what I came to learn. And, when we accept it that way too, then we aren't fighting with, at my lowest point, Katie, I'll be complaining and I'll say, "Oh, there's too much work. I'm so tired. I don't know if I can do all this." And I'll cry like a little girl. And Gene, my husband, knows that, okay, give her a day to be pitiful. By tomorrow, she's finding solutions and getting it done like nobody's business, So that's kind of the dark side of my path. And then the good side is, I've got 8 books out. I've helped thousands of clients. I'm booked with clients till July, and I'm so excited about my work. So we live both sides now, as Joni Mitchell said. We live both sides of the path. We just try to lean more into the positive side whenever we can remember.
One of the other things that really fascinated me in this book that I had not seen before was this concept of adding up the numbers for the vowels versus the consonants, and then having different meanings. I'd never seen that before, and I thought that was so intriguing. It was like
so intriguing, Katie, because when you do my birth name, again, going from the birth name, my soul longing number is 7, which is a spiritual number. I'm basically longing for heaven, longing to meditate, longing for retreat, longing to get out of this earth world. And then my personality number is also a 7. And to me, that means I really don't have a personality for the earth. I don't. Like, I'm terrible at small talk. I'm not cute and funny and peppy in the world as much as I want to be. Like, I just have to speak my truth all the time, which gets me in a lot of trouble. Because my personality number reflects my soul's longing, right? And then the interesting thing is that my husband, Gene, his name numbers are completely flipped from mine. So, for example, he has this powerful 22-4 personality. So my life path, remember, is 22-4, but people meet me and they don't know me and they just kind of go, "Who's that weird, quiet girl over there?" Like that's how they read me, really. And for Gene, he comes into a room with this big 22-4 personality and everybody like, "Wow, what a powerful guy." And you ask him what he believes in about the world or what he thinks, and he's like, "I don't know," And so it's like we're just completely flipped in it. And that makes us compatible. And I've also been told it's a sign that we did come to hold each other up and support each other, in the weak places that we're missing. And in a good relationship or a good soul agreement, that's kind of how we plug each other's holes to get through life together,
So just to be clear for people who haven't read the book yet, the value of the vowels is, ta-da, available on Amazon. The vowel value, say that 5 times fast, gives you your soul's longing, right? And the consonant that's your personality.
Yeah. So, Katie, what is your personality number?
I think I figured it out. I did. My personality number Oh, no. Do I not do it? Did I not do it? Oh,
Oh,
yes,
that's your
I did do
homework.
it. I did do it. If you're gonna do Katie Coons, my personality is a 3. If you're gonna do
Oh,
Catherine Louise, then it's a little different. Then it's in
what
the
a
it's an 11 too.
Ah, well, you act in the world like a 3 because you're so creative and so playful and so fun. But now I know you well enough to know that there's that sensitive 11 really as your personality. You don't show that you get your feelings hurt or that you're sensitive, but I got you, girl. I know.
And for the record, I have to say the first time I met you in the lobby of the hotel on Unity's campus, I did not think you were the weird, quiet girl.
Oh, thank you for that.
You were the brightest light in the room.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing. I remember sitting down next to you on those couches and talking, and I think you were busy on your way somewhere. We only had like 5 minutes, but I remember thinking, wow, I just hope we can be friends. Like, I don't even live here, and I don't know if I'll ever see her again, but it was just an instant thing.
Well, our paths were absolutely meant to cross. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I also wanted to point out one of the other things that I find so interesting in here is that you also weave in the whole astrology thing. And again,
Yeah,
I've never seen someone combine astrology
right.
and numerology.
Well,
So
I'm so
can you
glad
tell
you
us
brought
about
that
that?
up because yes, when I first started studying the numbers, it was nobody did that, right? But as I would start to work with people, even when in the early years when I was giving it away for free, I would notice, gee, um, a Pisces 11 path is way more sensitive and has a harder time being in this world than an Aries 11 path. And so I started really looking into that and comparing astrology and numerology. And by the way, if you really dig into it, I don't call myself an astrologer, but if you really start comparing like sun sign, rising sign, and all that to numbers and everything, there is so much synced up in that system. And I find it so fascinating. But I decided that for my clients, the best way to help them was I would figure out their path and get their sun sign and, like, for example, put on the folder. I wish I had one of my client folders here. I would show you. I've been doing it the same way for like 25 years where I have a folder and in the middle I write Virgo 22 and personal year and age. And then I put my hand on that before the session and I feel the whole gestalt of that soul journey for that person. And I ask to feel it. I ask to be shown what have they struggled with? What are they here to do? What is their deepest pain? What is their greatest gift? And then I pick up my pen because I'm a writer and I just start automatic writing, for their soul from their guide. And then if they're grieving, I'll turn the folder over and I'll have their departed person's path there. And I'll put my name on that. And I'll say, what words of healing and guidance do you have for my client? And I'll just right away start writing, automatic writing. And especially if they're children who've crossed, those kids come across so clearly. They want to help their parents heal so badly. They give me pages and pages of writing for their parents, for their mom, their dad. And so I use the astrology, numerology as my gateway into picking up that person's soul journey and their departed loved one's journey. And that's how we start the session as I go, here's your path and your sun sign and all of that and your personal year. And here's what your guide says about you. And then we turn the folder over and here's what your departed loved one's path is. And this is the feeling I get from that. And here's what they had to say. And then I'll say, does any of that resonate? And I have to say, like 99% of the time, they go, yes, and then the conversation unfolds from there. And we study the personal year cycles and all of that. And it's so helpful to people. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it after all these years if people just weren't saying to me, oh my God, they go back and listen to the recording because I record it. I'll have clients come to me 10 years later and say, I have listened to that recording every year in January to get a reset of my path and everything. And I guess now it's time for me to come back and do another session after 10 years. And so we'll do another session. But yeah, it's bigger than me. It's way bigger than me. It's just a gateway, a portal into our soul's journey and our soul's wisdom. So it's not a math
I love
class.
all these other elements that you add to this. It makes it deeper and richer, and it shows different facets of this. And it's why it's, you know, your system of numerology is so deep and so rich, and so it's not simplistic. It's not two-dimensional.
Yeah,
And
or like I tell people, it's not a math class, you know, like I don't like spending a lot of time on explaining the calculations. Like I want to get beyond that and say, here's what this means for you, you know,
right.
apply your soul's wisdom to this, apply your intuition to this. You know, when I was back 20 years ago and my books had come out, I See Your Dream Job, I See Your Soulmate, I would get on these radio shows. You know, some of them were like very obnoxious AM radio show people, and they would have callers come in and go, you know, and all I would get from the studio was, okay, this caller is named Mary and here's her date of birth. And I would be quickly, frantically like calculating it all, you know, and then I'd get on there and I'd quickly give her a mini reading about her journey. And that's when I really knew it worked, because this would be somebody from another city that I had no connection to, and they'd be on the radio going, oh my God, yes, I just did that thing you just said, you know, and I'd be going, yep, this is a portal to our wisdom. It's not about me, you know. And that's what really gave me faith in this system of sacred numerology.
You mentioned intuition, and I wanted to ask you about that too. You know, what does numerology have to do with intuition? How can we incorporate intuition into this model?
Well, this is my specialty, because if you go to most numerology teachers or books, they don't even mention the word intuition. But intuition has been my strongest gift, I think I would say, from the time I was growing up. And so, of course, when I started working with the numbers, you know, my intuition just naturally started getting involved in the numbers and what they were saying and what vibration I could feel. And look what I just got. Jean just came in to show me. Hot off the press, my new book from the publisher. It won't be out till June, but oh my gosh. And Katie, you helped me with this book. Katie is the person I called when Inner Traditions came and wanted me to do this book, and I was overwhelmed with editing, and Katie is a stellar book editor. And Katie went through it and cleaned it up and told me how to fix different things and told me how to organize it. And Katie, you're so flipping brilliant, because it is a book I am so proud of now, and it'll be out in June.
And it's a brilliant book. I loved it. I loved it.
Well, we'll do another book launch for that one in June, you and me.
We will.
So I don't know, intuition is just the way I work, you know, so I started learning, and then I taught it to many coaches. I mean, that part of my career I'm done with. It was just so much work. I had to let go of it, but I would do these weekend webinars where I would train coaches to use numbers and intuition to work with clients. And some of them still do. I trained hundreds of them around the country. And some of those coaches I'm still hearing from, and they're still friends, and they've learned to put their hand on that information and absorb knowledge and write about it and help the client. So anyone can use intuition and anyone can learn numerology. And imagine how different this world would be if instead of going around going, that person is terrible and I want to hurt them and it's their fault, or I'm a terrible person, or life is too hard. Instead, we would have conversations like, oh, how's your path working out for you? Are you in a 9 personal year? Can I help you, baby? You know, wouldn't that be a better world?
Absolutely. Totally agree. So I also wanted to ask you about the soul agreement. How does understanding that really help you with relationships? Because you've talked about relationships and especially hearing from people who have departed. How does it help you with relationships that are going on
I tell
here
you,
right now?
it's everything because, but I have to say, everything is free will. I'm also throwing that in there. Because you might be having trouble getting along with someone. So for example, my family of origin, I had some problems, you could say, getting along with my family of origin. I was quite different from them. And I left home when I was 17 and I was pretty much shunned. They weren't Amish, they were Catholic, but I was shunned for a long time from them because I was different, because I marched against the Vietnam War, because I loved Martin Luther King. I mean, you name it in the 60s, and I was breaking all their rules. But then when I finally had numerology and I could go back and understand who they are and what their paths are, and understand what my soul agreement with them was, it was just a huge light bulb, because now I didn't need to feel beat up by them or rejected by them or blame them. I could suddenly go, oh, wow, we actually were fulfilling our soul mission together. We actually were pushing each other to grow by being so different and looking at the world so differently. But the free will piece comes in. It's not necessarily going to make your daily interactions better. You kind of have to do your own inner spiritual work to be able to get along with people who might be on a path that's very conflicted with yours. So for example, if your soul agreement with someone is the number 8, you'll really like each other, but you'll find that you're butting heads all the time. And it's like someone is trying to get the power from the other one, or someone is giving away their power in order to get along with the other one, because the 8 soul agreement is all about power. Who has the power? And when it's first perfectly in balance, then you're both empowering yourselves and each other. But, if I could ever reach such a state in this lifetime, I think I'd be exalted right up to heaven immediately. Because the human part of us is still like, I can't believe you said that to me. That's the human. And so, yeah, we can have all this wonderful understanding of the soul agreement, but then still we got to have the day-to-day interactions and just try to learn from it with the knowledge of numerology behind us.
I love that. That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, any tool to help us with relationships is valuable in my book.
No kidding, right? Relationships are the sandpaper that forces us to get smoother and shinier and better, because we're always bumping up against each other and disagreeing and hurting each other's feelings. It's like a rock tumbler, we're all in here on our own journeys and we're all trying to figure it out. And we're all just like, oh, I'm here to do this. And oh, I'm here to do this. And oh, get out of my way, and then we all come out of the rock tumbler crossing into the divine, and we're much smoother and shinier and better from it all.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me ask you one of my favorite questions, which is, what did I forget to ask you? Is there more in this book that, there's a lot in this book. There's tons in this book that we could barely touch it.
I think that the Pinnacle Cycles, I briefly want to talk about because we didn't bring those up. I don't do those with clients because I have found that in a client session, there's only so much information that they can absorb and still be clear about their mission. But in my own life and in my classes, I really like talking about the Pinnacle Cycles because, and those are on, and I made a little note of what page they were on. I must have had a precognitive knowing that we would forget to talk about them. But on page 49, I explain what those mean. So everybody here has these 4 different pinnacles of learning in their lifetime. And there's very kind of complicated ways you have to add it. And so that's in the workbook. And then it's also complicated because depending on the path you're on, it depends on, that determines how many years of your life you're under the influence of each pinnacle. And it changes. So it's crazy complicated in a way. And that's why I don't bring it into my sessions. But once you figure it out, it puts your life into perspective in an incredible way. Because when I figured out my pinnacle lessons, it was so uncanny. Like the time when my journalism career was really taking off and I was working 24/7 in this very stressful magazine, as you know, magazine editor position, I was under a 22 pinnacle, right? All of that hard work, and I was writing about health. It was such a 22 time. I was kind of famous in the natural products and natural foods industry for my writing and everything. And then my new pinnacle starts right before my daughter is born, my only daughter my only child I ever had. And the pinnacle is the number 1. And I was a single mom pretty much as soon as Sarah was born, or pretty shortly after I became a single mom. And that 1 pinnacle was learning to be independent and to raise a child by yourself. I have to say, it has to be one of the hardest things we take on. And it's such a 1 energy. You feel so alone, and yet you learn to be strong and competent. You learn how to fix things that break in the house. You just learn how to not rely on somebody. And then that one ended, fortunately, right before I came out of the closet as the career intuitive, doing numerology and making my living from it. And then I was on the 7 pinnacle, and that'll be my final pinnacle. And so I'm in my spiritual learning journey for the rest of this life under the 7. So it makes me feel so at peace. For me, that 7 pinnacle is a guidepost for the rest of my life, no matter what hard things come. And of course they will, but I know that my soul is really embracing intuition and spiritual knowledge, and I don't need to be the life of the party. So the 7 works for me really well. So Katie, I've just gone on way too long here, but I just want to thank you because we've covered everything about this. And you've asked brilliant questions, and I can't wait to get together with you someday again in real life, not virtual life.
I might drag you on a travel adventure. Be careful.
Yes, and next time you go on a world trip vacation, gosh, maybe I can change my birth path for a minute and go with you. I could ask for a special compensation, as they say in the Catholic Church.
I think that would work.
All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much. There's just so many. And remember, go check out her magazine. Her magazine is Unity Magazine. And what's the website for it, Katie?
UnityMagazine.org.
There you go. And it's put out by Unity Church of Practical Spirituality, which I'm an ordained Unity minister. It's all about this all good, all God universe. And my view of numerology fits right into that. And Katie creates amazing content for this magazine that she interviews world famous authors and teachers, and you'll love the magazine. So on that note, thank you so much, everybody. And until we meet again.
Amazon.
Yes, it's $5.99 on Amazon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sue. Bye-bye.